Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode on Founders Tribe, a podcast production presented by thestartupchef.com. This is once again your host, Sven Milder, and like every week, I invite inspiring global movers and shakers to the show to casually chat about successful strategies they have deployed to found and build awesome businesses and live fulfilling lives. At the Startup Chef, we are on a mission to elevate and inspire 100,000 founders globally to help them shortcut their road to success by offering easy access to investment capital and world-class expertise. If you want to discover more or download one of our free resources that can help you propel your business forward, visit us at thestartupchef.com. Thestartupchef.com. If you really would love to know how to expand your business fast over several countries, then my podcast with my good friend Viktor, Kyosev, COO of Greenhouse, is definitely your place to be. In this podcast, we are tapping into some golden nuggets, what step to take to bring your company fast in a variety of countries. But not only that, we are discussing the pivots, the difficulties, the learnings from the hard things about the hard things. In short, a very powerful episode where one of our guests, Viktor, is definitely going to show you how he dealt with a variety of problems and challenges and victories. Viktor is the CEO of Greenhouse, has been living in 6 different kind of countries, is currently active in Indonesia, and he is truly on a dent to help people succeed. Without further ado, let's just jump straight on into today's episode. Viktor, very welcome today at another episode of the Founders Tribe. I'm super happy to have you here. It becomes more like a new norm to do everything over Zoom. I still remember our previous guest was quite legendary. It was suddenly an in-person meeting, which is not really the new norm anymore, but it's more like the abnormal. You as an expert, current COO of Greenhouse, supporting many companies to go online. And we were quickly checking before the conversation, like, okay, rather than declining business, your business is significantly growing currently. Do you think that has to do that everyone has amazing ideas and they would like to incorporate those ideas as a brand new company? Or do all of these big companies have suddenly global aspirations?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me today. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun and appreciate the invite. And to answer your question, actually most of the companies that we're helping are not people that are incorporating for the first time, but I think what's happening is that it's just getting easier and easier to do business globally, especially as, there's so many companies nowadays that are tech-enabled, which allows them to do business with any country. And especially in Southeast Asia, what we have noticed is that the moment a company fundraises a Series A, immediately they start looking into other markets. Hence why we definitely are quite busy, as you pointed out, and there is a lot of activity in the region right now.
Awesome. So I was very blessed actually to see this morning on LinkedIn one of your posts where you were referring like, hey, once upon a time when I was a young guy, I wanted to travel the whole world. And you have lived in many countries before, which I'm definitely going to tap into pretty soon. And then this morning, you were chatting with a lot of different kind of people from different kind of geographies. But what makes me very interesting as well is the variety and the diversity of your current team, right? I mean, I saw something, they were from Nepal, Singapore, right? People from India. So how does this way of working with people from different kind of geographies in a remote way is really fruitful for Greenhouse and for you personally?
I guess because we have offices in Jakarta and Singapore, so from the very beginning we had even before COVID, right? When things were normal, when people could actually fly and meet each other in regular circumstances. Even back then, we had a lot of meetings online. So the moment COVID happened, of course, that accelerated. But in a way, the fact that we have offices across 2 countries, and even though they're very close, we still jump on a lot of Zoom calls. So it was quite easy to transition. I think people took it quite naturally. And of course, that comes with a lot of opportunities, right? You can hire people anywhere. And what really matters at the end of the day is, to hire some smart people that are a great fit for your organization. So as in our case, we have people from, I believe, 9 different countries that are working at Greenhouse, and some of them, are based in Indonesia, some in Singapore, and many of them are based in other parts of the world.
So do you think that being in the same time zone is crucial for success in this case?
I think when there is a difference of, let's say, about 4 hours, it starts getting difficult.
Yeah.
And when it reaches 8 hours, it gets very difficult. I mean, especially when we do business with the US, it's very obvious because I need to wake up 6 in the morning, jump on my first meeting at 7, just so some people on the other side of the world can have a meeting at 7 or 8 p.m. Right? So both of us are compromising, and it's not easy. So I think there is a limit to how much you can do, and it also depends on what kind of roles. Let's say design roles or developer roles, they don't need that much of communication. But when you're talking on business matters or marketing or anything around that, I think it's important to be on similar time zones.
Yeah, I think, and you know this as well from experiencing it very close by. We know each other from the Jakarta time, and one of these things was that all of these big tech powerhouses were trying to, almost like a soccer manager finding the right kind of talent. We're looking for the developers, the product managers, the growth hackers, the operation managers, and it all needs to come from the same pond, which was Jakarta, right? And what's now very interesting is, due to the acceleration of remote work, is that we're suddenly able to pull from whole Southeast Asia, which not offers only price competitiveness, but it also creates, we have way more people to actually choose from. So can you tell if you're seeing in your portfolio of companies that you are currently assisting in through incorporation services, through company secretary services, through a market entry, is that already visible for you that it's more like a very big variety of people that are active within these companies?
It's definitely, I mean, it's in a way, yes. It's hard to give an exact number, right? Because we're just an external observer of all these interactions and how companies move around the region. But it's definitely getting more popular. And when you think about it, some cultures in the region are just, or not just cultures, but countries in general are better positioned for certain tasks. Like, for example, Philippines, having English as a native language, it just makes it as the go-to place for support roles. Then Vietnam has done a pretty good job when it comes, to developing really good programmers, right? So because of that, a lot of companies start looking more and more there. Whereas before, as you mentioned, right, everyone's going to try to squeeze all developer communities in Jakarta, but at the end of the day, there's just that many. And what's happening is that because the supply is so low, the salaries are getting really high. So now you're going to pay like a ridiculously high salary in Jakarta for a developer that's very mediocre, whereas you can go to Vietnam and find someone that's much better at a decent rate. So we definitely see more of that happening.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting because nobody was actually ever expecting it to move into that direction. And I still remember from my old days as well that some of the developers had this trend of working for 6 months here, 6 months there. And with each time that they were moving actually up to the ladder, it was another reason to say like, hey, but listen, in my previous job, I was earning X, right? And then we were almost a client and forced, because of that scarcity, to take on those kind of roles. So
let me give you an example. Let me give you a very recent example.
Yeah,
we
please.
have a developer who quit recently. He got offered 100% increase of his current salary. 100%, just like that.
Yeah. So without naming any company names, but if it's very recently, you could almost say like, okay, these companies haven't yet figured out that there's way more talent available if they're just doing a little bit more of a job in the correct way. So what is the secret sauce for Greenhouse to work remotely very efficiently, that you can still reach your target? So I asked this to most of the the guests that we had in the last months, because it's just a key topic where everybody is dealing with. You have your standard software tools, but what is really working for you that you think like, okay, this is something that I would love to give to the audience because it thrives by adapting this kind of methods.
Yeah, so I don't think we have been able to establish a proper playbook that we can just easily pass to new employees or to partners or to anyone else. And of course, as you mentioned yourself, tools are very important, and educating the team how to use tools, because especially in fast growth markets like Indonesia, Vietnam, and Philippines, even tools like Zoom can be challenging for some people, right? So I think it all starts with educating them how to use it. And then also we use a lot of automation when it comes, to connecting different tools, like, a lot of reminders. So whenever, a meeting is coming in, or if it's an important meeting, there is, an integration between Slack and the calendar that's going to remind you, that's going to kind of, tell you that you need to prepare. So we're doing our best to automate, but, not just to make it very efficient, but also to have a lot of reminders and a lot of communication to go out to every employee and explain them, what's going on, what's happening and why. So I think, it's this mix of educating them how to use tools and then automating as much as you can. Yeah, I think that's been very, very helpful for us, but we're still building our playbook of what's going to really be our way to work remote in the long run.
Yeah, I'm actually very happy that you're sharing that, because it's constantly in the back of my mind. I need to write a playbook. And I think I have it already on the to-do list for now. I could easily say around 20 days. But because we are hiring as well, I think the power of a playbook, when it comes to setting your cultures, when it comes to what tools are we working with, when it comes to, for example, what I think is a very important one, and I'm curious about your opinion, is the how are decisions made, right? Not that you're constantly still micromanaging everyone through the tools. I think also one of the things that really happens is that people become more in control, and should become more in control in making their own decisions, and therefore the visions are a crucial effect. Is that something that you are thinking about currently as a CEO?
At some point, when the team was a bit bigger in a pre-COVID world, we actually started writing a playbook on all that. But then, COVID happened, and we needed to really downgrade the team quite a bit, unfortunately. So after going through the layoffs, it wasn't that much of a priority because we were a much smaller team. And when the team is smaller, communication flows much easier. I think when you reach about 30 people, it becomes very important to have a playbook that clearly communicates how things need to happen. Before that, and especially when you're just a small company at, let's say, up to 10, 20 people, I think it's not that much of a problem, and then you can communicate. And it's a lot about, in the early days, finding the right fit, because if you find the right fit, typically people click better with each other and they understand what's expected. So you don't need to communicate that much, and you don't need to write that much about what is expected. So I think it depends on your phase, right? How big is the company, and across also how many geographies do you operate? In our case, I don't think right now we need one, but before COVID, I definitely saw the need and I started writing it. I still have it. I use a lot of the material in our hiring efforts. So, because this essentially really showcases the culture of the company and how we think about important decisions. So it helps to filter people. So it's still useful, but I never really completed the book.
One of the key things that I always enjoy when talking to you, and actually also reviewing all of your performance online, is that the broad scope of countries that your guys are active in, right? And I mean, you say you have clients from the US, from Korea, you're helping people to get access into a variety of Southeast Asian countries. What would be the first step if a business goes very well, they're making the profits, they have their playbooks ready, assuming they're above 30 people, they have their process into place to scale. What can you tell, what will be the steps to take if they want to expand their services over Southeast Asia? Is there a playbook?
And that's a playbook I'm actually writing. so that's a proper playbook. And what we have noticed in COVID again, because people can't travel and because some countries block people from other countries, like Singapore is pretty strict, for example, when it comes for Indonesian people, right? Because of the number of cases. So what we have noticed work very well right now is what we call here at Greenhouse market research and validation services. So these are services that allow you to really get a sense of how the market works. And in the beginning, I assumed that only startups and smaller businesses would use this kind of services. But I just had a meeting with the managing team at Zero, and they're pretty big public company, and turns out that's exactly how they test new markets. And when I'm referring to market research and validation, what I mean is that there is about four services that are really common, and one is business matchmaking, and that's often companies come to us and they would tell me I need to meet an investor, I need to meet the VC in Indonesia because I would like to have someone strategic in Indonesia, and I just would like to get a sense. I'm not going to pitch necessarily to fundraise. I just want to get a sense of the market. Other times they're going to ask us for distributors, suppliers, potential clients, right? So we arrange meetings that, in a way, help you validate the market. For other customers, like right now we have an Eastern European customer that is selling to banks. They're essentially having a cybersecurity solution. And because of that, we're arranging a webinar with decision makers. So 6 different, decision makers in different banks. So that's in a way also, you can call it focus group / business matchmaking. But that's common. Lead generation services, whereas, our partners in different markets can provide a database of companies they actually called and made sure that it exists and you can reach out to. The standard market research, of course, and another one called in-market representation, whereas you can build a whole sales team without hiring any people, without incorporating in that market, right? So and I think that's something that Zero did. They built sales teams in different markets without actually incorporating there and without establishing an entity, and tested the market in that way. That really allows you to get some early learnings and to see whether your playbook in your market where you're coming from would be applicable to the new market. So there is a surge in the need for this kind of services, and that's what we're really busy with right now.
So you think that people are thinking too easy to just make the step to another country, not identifying in time, or just making too much assumptions that, this will be okay, this will be the same?
Yeah, I think, especially, again, there's different types of markets. You have the developed markets that, if you operate in a developed market and you go to another developed market, chances are that's going to be quite similar. Of course, you're going to have some cultural differences and some unique challenges. But when it comes to fast growth markets, and when it comes, to operating in Indonesia and Vietnam and Myanmar or Thailand, and you used to operate, let's say, only in Hong Kong, it's going to be very, very different, right? The customer behavior is going to be different. It's going to be much more challenging to get the basic, even to set up the entity. And even finding an office is going to take you a while, right? So all these things are very challenging. So it really depends, whether you're going into these markets. And if you're going into these markets, I think it's a must to do some proper research. If you're going in a developed market, that again depends for what reasons you're going to a developed market. But yeah, I think emerging markets is they're so challenging, and we've seen a lot of companies, even some pretty large companies, that would come, set up, hire people, and 1 year later they would just leave the market because it proved too difficult.
So if you need to give one takeaway, that if people make the move to go to another country, what is the biggest pitfall they will bump into?
There's so many, right? Especially in these markets that I just mentioned. I guess, the most important thing for them to do is to meet people on the ground and to talk to them. In some cases, we even meet companies with their direct competitors. We arrange, calls with their direct competitors, and we see whether they can help each other. So talking to people on the ground is just super valuable. So because so many things can go wrong. I think when people are coming to emerging markets, they expect that the legislation is a bit tricky and there's some gray areas, so that's expected. But what they don't expect is how long it's going to take them to get traction. I think that's one thing that people all the time underestimate. They expect that it's going to be really fast. The market is huge. For sure, there's going to be need for their product, but it takes much longer. So yeah, I definitely think that it's important for them to consider that.
So actually, if we need to make it, I like to simplify things and use parables to make the point. Greenhouse is here to literally take people at their hand, right? Give them a sense of belonging into a new country by almost saying, like, okay, here are a bunch of friends around the table. These are their opinions. this is the direction where you need to go, and therefore the smooth transition in another country becomes an easy one, right?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
Doing
Well,
our best.
this reminds me as well, for all of the listeners that are currently tuned in, I'm very happy that Viktor is giving away a free strategy call for everyone who has a serious interest in exploring markets. Please be aware that if you have this interest, that you definitely have the appetite to go through this phase. Greenhouse is here to make it easier for you. So if you want to connect and would like to take action on this strategy session, please drop us an email, and we're happy to bring you in contact. We have discussed a lot of business, right? And that's perfectly fine. But what I really love to hear from my guests as well is like a little bit of their life journey. We jumped for a second in your LinkedIn post this afternoon, where you said, like, okay, you had this big dream to literally travel the world, which you have actually as well done, because if I did my research very well, you're born in Bulgaria, you've studied in China, you've been in Denmark, you have lived in Taiwan. Currently, you're very active in actually helping people get access to Southeast Asian countries. Very versatile background when it comes to a strong expertise in hospitality management, which is very much people driven. And now on the other side, very much entrepreneurial journey. But especially when I was reading that, I just wanted to know, like, what are the main takeaways that you brought from your experience in hospitality into entrepreneurship, which is most of the time, I guess, quite tech orientated.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and I've been reflecting on that quite a bit. And I think the more time I run tech startups, the more I understand the value of having experience in the hospitality, and it mainly boils down to relationships and how to handle relationships and how to treat people. Because no matter how much technology you involve in your business and how small your team is, or what kind of product you sell, no matter what, you're gonna talk to people. Yeah. Whether it's your clients, partners, you're always gonna need people, and knowing how to treat them with respect and nurturing relationships, I think it's very valuable, especially in Asian countries, right, where it's just the norm. And unlike Denmark, where I used to live, and in Denmark, typically when you enter a meeting, the chit chat is perhaps a minute, and then you go straight to the point. And in 5 to 10 minutes, you're done and you just walk away, right? And it's super focused on being...
The coffee is still hot,
Exactly. So it's a very different culture, right? But being in Asia, relationship matter a lot. So I think the hospitality really taught me how to treat people, and how to nurture relationships, and that's what really helps me right now as we manage a network of about 100 partners across 15 different geographies. And it's really hard, because we're a small team. We can't always give business to all of our partners, but there are ways to deliver value as long as you're a good human and you care about them. So I think we've been really good at that and providing value in all sorts of ways to partners across many geographies.
So you come across as a person that is very thoughtful about his actions. It became very clear about the decisions that you have made from your childhood, the studies that you have been following, and then making suddenly the path into entrepreneurship. But let's talk for a moment about, like, okay, how do you approach new ideas? How do you approach decision making in your life? Do you have special almost frameworks that work really well for you? I mean, you're now currently COO, which is very much structured thinking, and that structured thinking I see as well in your whole biography and how everything has been evolving. So I'm curious, what is your framework that has brought you literally from your immense career now running a greenhouse?
Well, I wish I had a really simple framework that I would say you follow these 4 steps and then everything works out really well. But in different situations, it boils down to different things. But I guess, of course, being organized is very important in my role, because being, in an operational role, I work across all departments and across multiple geographies. So, of course, it's very important to be organized. And I don't necessarily have a particular framework, I have a mindset that when something, so a few things that for me work very well are that small things, I get them done very fast. Unlike, a lot of people like to push smaller things and, just have them for a later point. Whenever something small comes my way, I get it done and I forget about it, right? So that's one thing. Another thing that I like to think that I do well is that when I meet someone new, I do my best to make a good impression and to deliver some sort of value to that person, right? Whether it's, just a quick introduction, even if he's not in any way a potential client or a partner, I just to very quickly make a quick introduction to someone else that they would like to meet, or help them however else they need. And I think these few things have helped me big time. Unfortunately, I don't necessarily have something super structured, but these two small things have been super helpful.
No, but I think that's already a crucial point you're just tapping into. We're meeting someone new. We want to make a great impression. Otherwise, it was almost a useless meeting in some kind of way, right? I think, like coming back to earlier our conversation, everything is very much people driven. Everything is very much relationship driven. And as soon as we have built that relationship, yeah, we can count on each other, and business will rise, right? That there's not a framework, I completely understand, but I'm still very curious about, it seems that you have made very thoughtful decisions in your career, right? Especially if I see, okay, you're from Bulgaria, you went to Denmark, then to China. I just feel that you have, a very clear vision what you wanted to achieve and how that fit very well in your current lifestyle. And perhaps that's the thing that I'm trying to discover from you, is like, okay, how do you set your direction, right? The decision making that comes together with that point is also some kind of decision making, right? I'm just very curious, how consciously are you busy with painting your future and making your decisions?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question, but it may look like things make sense now in retrospect, but back then they didn't,
Yeah.
right? So the dots are always connecting in retrospect, but looking forward, it's really hard to say what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I guess what works for me is that at any point in your life, you make decisions, right? And it's your job to really assess the environment, to understand all of your options and to make a decision, right? That's a very informed decision at that point in time. So and to believe that these decisions eventually would stack up and would make sense collectively. So I think that's something that I did. So going back to Bulgaria, right? I started in the hospitality because back then, coming from a family where I'm the first person that ever got a university degree, and I wanted to travel, and looking at the hospitality, I somehow had that idea that that's the only way for me to travel, which thinking now about it, it's ridiculous, right? I mean, you can travel but whatever you do, you can travel, right? It's just nothing holds you. But back then, that's how I looked at it. So I jumped into the hospitality. As I started working in the hospitality, and actually I started traveling a bit, then the decision to study for my bachelor's degree came into my life. So I started researching where I can do it, and Denmark became an obvious choice, as actually being a European citizen. It was free, so I didn't need to pay any tuition fees. So then you move to Denmark, right? And as you go through these experiences, you learn more and more, right? So at any point in time, I don't know how to explain it, but it just makes a lot of sense, the decision that you're taking. And when you look back, it makes even more sense. Yeah. But you don't really know where exactly you're going to go, but you do know that you're going in the right direction. And I think that's what's important, to have that feeling that your life goes in the right direction, rather than because if you have a too strict plan of how things are going to develop, well, no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow, right? You don't have control over the future, and you're going to get disappointed again and again. But rather than that, I prefer to have a direction. And when I feel good about my direction, I give my 200%, investing a lot in growing in that direction. And when I feel that direction is not right, I slow down and I try to pivot right into a different direction. So I guess that's what that was my process in the past couple of years.
Well, this was quite a pivot, right, from hospitality industry into the tech industries. So if you could give your younger self more like a piece of advice, something that you know right now that you didn't know then, right? What would it be?
Well, I guess you can give two types of advices. One that's very cheesy and that that people give to themselves after they reach certain age, or you can give a very practical advice. If it comes to very practical advice, I would rather study software development back in the days rather than what I studied. I think that would come much more handy considering what's going on around the world. So that's the very practical advice. And if it comes to the more cheesy advice that people like to share on social media, I guess it just going back to my previous point is to believe that whatever direction you're taking, and even though at times it's going to be really hard, things always get better eventually, right? And at times it feels pretty hard, and you don't really see how the current situation is going to end up becoming a really good one for you. But it's important to have a positive mindset and to keep on pushing, because eventually things always get better.
Yeah. So what's always very nice is it seems to almost be a Bible. So most of the guests that we are talking with, and maybe it's because we're all a little bit in the same area, the hard things about the hard things, right? I mean, that's almost, it should be a number one read for every founder. And you as well shared with us that it was one of your favorite business books. Can you still remember some of the things that you have applied or otherwise felt very recognizable for you, perhaps in the transition from greenhouse 1 into greenhouse 2, right? Because what you said, there has been a big pivot. Then there was also COVID, right? Quite a heavy time. What were your takeaways from that in regards to the book?
So the book argues essentially how the author went through a very big pivot, right? And that pivot was incredibly difficult, as there was the dot-com bubble on top of it, right? So there was I would say a global phenomena as well as a pivot in the business. So a lot of things stacked up and made it really hard, right? And despite that, he kept on pushing, and eventually, things worked out. So in Greenhouse case was quite similar on a much smaller scale though. We started as a co-working business, but about 14 months ago, we started pivoting the business to a tech platform. There were times that was really hard, as you need to convince, your investors, you need to convince your customers and your partners and even your employees that this is the right decision. Right now, looking at what happened with COVID, I'm really happy that we made this decision, because it would have been really difficult if we would start expanding our real estate business. In the book, they talk about peacetime and wartime CEO, right? And how to be a leader in different circumstances and how to make decisions. So I guess there's a bunch of elements, right, that helped from the book. One is, of course, from the very beginning, how do you communicate to our shareholders about what you're planning to do? I mean, no matter how much you read about that, it's always something really challenging. Because initially you go to these people, you convince them to give you money to do one thing, then, sometime later you go back and try to convince them once again to do another thing with their money. And of course they're resistant. Everyone is resistant. So it takes a while. So the book was definitely an inspiration when it comes to that. And then when COVID hit, and that really accelerated our pivot. So I think, Daniel becoming a war CEO and making some really difficult decisions very fast, right? We needed to let go of quite a few people in one day. And because of COVID, we couldn't even meet them. So we need to do it over Zoom. Before, the layoffs, it was really hard to sleep at night, right? Because I do care about these people, and I spent a lot of time trying to find, some of the best people in Jakarta and convince them to work with us. And now, I needed to make some really hard decisions. So I think the book was very helpful that, it shows you that you're not the only one that goes through such decisions, and that this happens. And there are certain ways that you can act that gonna be better appreciated from your employees, and that would also gonna give you a peace of mind as a human, right, in making these decisions. So I definitely think the book was super helpful, and I was just talking to our CEO today about it, and I think we managed the layoffs as humanly as possible, and we still have a great relationship with all these people, and they like us, and they talk to us quite often. So I think we managed to do a pretty good job considering everything, right? So the book was definitely very helpful.
So what have you done? What was your strategy, right? I mean, that's something that we haven't discussed, and I think that is for many CEOs, many executives, key to understand, like, if you're going through such a time, because I mean, COVID is not yet over. It's still very challenging. Some people talking about there's a larger depression coming. So perhaps people need to deal with this. And you just shared with me one insight is that, your former employees feel good. There's still a good relationship going on. So can you give us some takeaways of decisions that you have been making that have worked out very well for you?
Yeah, I think the most important one was, the moment we realized what's going on and that we need to go full speed with this pivot, was to cut one time really deep. The last thing that you want is to cut again and again and again and fire people, because that's going to destroy your culture, right? People are going to be afraid whether they're going to stay the next month or not. So I think the first decision that was very important was like, you need to cut deeper than what seems necessary, but that's better than cutting, less, right? So we went with really, really deep cut on our manpower, right? So that was really hard. It was a hard decision, but it was the right decision. We all agreed that we need to do it. Yeah, I think that was from a strategic point of view, because obviously it extended our runaway quite a bit immediately, and it just positioned the entire company in different light, right? Because now the company was much more focused on the new model, because you left only these employees. The company became also quite, I would say, much more efficient, because you kind of trimmed the fat, right? Like, so people that stayed were actually very effective, I would say, and we managed to be pretty productive despite everything. So I think that's one really memorable, I would say, decision that took place, and we executed really, really well. And then, the way we executed it, to give some more insights, was that once again, you cannot, at least in my opinion, you can't just go and talk to your employees about what's coming, because again, that's going to go, it's going to be bad for the culture, because people are going to start, like talking to each other. They're going to be afraid who's going to stay, who's going to go, right? And that's not what you want. So you need to do it really fast and in a very human way, and you need to explain them why you're doing it, right? So what we did is, in one day, we sent, like, we had a meeting with everyone, and we told them we're going to need to do some layoffs. That's important. And then, we had, everything was planned super well. Like, we had all the meetings scheduled. We had our script prepared. Every manager went through practice sessions of how they need to say it and what's important to say, how to show empathy. Wow. Because, the moment we made the decision, we still had a window of about, I would say, 10 days until we executed. So in these 10 days, what we did is that we activated our network like crazy. And we started calling people and saying, are you hiring? Are you hiring? Are you hiring? So many of the employees that we fired, we were like, we know we're going to need to let you go, but I actually found your job, right? Wow. So that, was something that people appreciated a lot, right? And we did that for our best employees, for sure. They got jobs quite immediately. And because so many companies that worked with us, they like our team, and they were very eager to hire people from Greenhouse, even though they weren't necessarily hiring at that time.
Yeah. Wow, I think big lessons here. What I don't want to say because it's not a very pleasant topic, but a necessary topic, is you cut the wound deeper. So rather than taking it slow, and then later on again banging your head against the wall, you need to do it again, which is way more painful. You bought yourself additional time by making also the decision to run into a pivot where that it's unnecessary to keep these people into the same kind of business model, and then making the decision to cut the wound deeper. I think that shows a lot of courage. The fact as well, the second learning, where you share very clearly that there's a preparation and calling your existing network, which is of course huge, with the things that you're doing, to see where you can reposition the members. I think that shows for a lot of respect, though I can understand that it was a difficult period for you as well. Post pivot, so then you have had the most difficult time in your life. You were working from home, right? Everything happens at the same time. How do you go into this new culture, into this new direction post pivot?
Yeah. So what happens first is that you go through this super painful experience, right? And because you build a business, you start a business, you build it, the business starts working very well and starts producing a lot of revenue, and then you make this strategic decision to pivot, right, and move to something completely different. And the moment you go through these layoffs and the moment things stabilize, you're already quite exhausted. And not only you, the entire team is quite exhausted, because it's not like you're just starting this new venture. You've been running a new venture, and now you're starting another new venture. So that was a bit tricky, right? Because now you need to excite everyone. Now you're going to be like, all right, now that we're more focused, and now that we see a lot more potential in what we're doing, we need to really give our best, because we have only one more shot at this, and we need to make it work. So keeping the excitement of everyone, I think that was quite hard. Not because people didn't believe in our strategic decision. In fact, everyone on the team supported us quite a bit. But it's just exhausting. It's mentally draining, to go through such a big pivot and to let people go and to come up with new processes. Suddenly, you need to measure different metrics. There is a learning curve for the entire team, and it takes a while before your product becomes any good, right? Because now you have started all over again. So I think the first few months were quite difficult, but once you go through that, I think it's very important that you establish as much communication as possible during this few vulnerable. So we would have calls every morning, every evening with all employees, and just always being positive and explaining them about the small wins that we're gaining along the way. And once that happens, then you start for the first time, you have the peace of mind to really understand what is in front of you, what are the challenges that you're facing, and then you start thinking, okay, so how can we get to product market fit now, right? What are the steps that we need to take, and how long time we can afford to be iterating, and how fast can we iterate until we get to that point? And I think that again comes with a lot of different lessons and a lot of different approaches. In the beginning, we tried to follow a lot, I would say, the lean startup way. But I think once you operate for a while in a given industry, and once you do things manually, right? So because you don't have a product that's really good, so in the beginning you connect things manually, and you're always in the middle of between customers and vendors and everything else, right? Because the product is not there. I think it comes a point that you start understanding very well what's necessary out there. So in fact, you don't need to test that much, right? Because it becomes very crystal clear in your mind how the product needs to be shaped. And then, it's about convincing everyone to follow you, because now you have the insights that are necessary. And then, again, convincing the entire team to follow your lead. I think that again becomes a challenge that comes at a later point. I'm not sure if that answered the question, but I'm just trying to walk you through.
I think that definitely answers the question. What I truly like about it is, like, once you find that aha moment, right, then your role also becomes suddenly a very pleasant one, right? Because everything what you do, you can just focus on that one thing and start creating that momentum in your business. If I'm not mistaken, you have as well raised a new round of capital in that period, isn't it?
We did a small bridge.
Yeah. Wow. So I can imagine that was quite a time going on. I mean, there's people going away. There's a new business model. You're doubling down on it, and in the meantime, as well, you're raising your next round.
Yeah, that was, and it's also because of raising a new round in the midst of a pivot that increases the complexity quite a bit, because new investors, they don't care about your pivot. They just don't. What they care about is, like, you need to convince them that the new direction is going to make sense, and that comes with certain traction. So no one cares that you had something that worked very well, and now you have something else that's very promising, right? They care about, okay, prove me that it works. So that's why you mentioned earlier, how come we're across so many countries? Well, we really needed to accelerate our growth across multiple countries and geographies. So we needed to trigger a bit of a network effect to convince new investors to get on board. So that wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, especially when there is, a COVID environment and people are a bit just more difficult, right? It's hard to do business with strangers. And, many of the people we're doing business with, many of the service providers on our platform, they don't know how to use Zoom, right? So meeting them, convincing them to work with us, that took a while. But we needed to accelerate the supply side of the marketplace a fair bit to convince investors that, okay, not only that we got the better direction now sorted out, but we're also very capable in this new line of business. And yeah, that was hard, but fortunately that worked out.
So so there was a customer validation process going on. I mean, the investor would like to have some more confidence. When we help students to raise capital, it's always about de-risking the opportunity, creating an amazing fundament, taking care of a story that really makes sense, and building confidence around the way. So how have you dealt at, not the table in this case, because likely those meetings took place online, but how did you deal with that investor resistance, where maybe you also feel that they are, they are giving you a hard time because you need the cash, right? And in the meantime, you're in the middle of your pivot. So how have you dealt with the investor needs in that case, and how did you convince them that this was the right way?
Yeah, I guess two answers. One, as you mentioned yourself, is the story that you tell them, which is very, very, very important, right? Then from day one until today, everything needs to make sense, right? They should not feel that you're lost, or the business is going in a zigzag direction, right? They should feel that you're always going in the same direction. You just change the way you're going in that direction. So, working on the narrative was one thing, like how we started as a co-working and what we learned from our interactions offline with customers and servicing foreign businesses coming into Indonesia, and how we started, in the beginning manually to match with service providers, and how we realized how big this opportunity is, and eventually we started digitalizing the experience, right? So the story needed to make sense. That's the first. And the second was the velocity, right? So proving that even though we had a short period of time on this new model, we managed to get the supply side in the marketplace to do a lot of progress when it comes to the supply side, to sign a lot of different partners across multiple geographies, right? At rates that make sense, right? Not just to sign them for the sake of having an MOU, but actually signing them in agreements that in the long run going to pay back quite well. So velocity and storytelling, I think, were two elements that helped a lot in our case to fundraise this bridge round.
And then you see as well that the timing is right? I mean, I think a lot of times when we support the founders, one of the key things that we found out is like the investor needs to feel that this is the right business model or the right business at this given time. And I think that every investor could see that if Greenhouse becomes more like this marketplace and people want to expand into geographies, and especially in the current period where physical meetings are not really there, how do you select the right providers, right? How do you connect? And I think that has definitely also contributed in the fact that you're getting your trust, you have your network, and you make market entries actually a way more easier than ever before.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to give an example, in conversations with investors, we often bring how not digitalized many of our partners are, right? We have a service provider, and that's my favorite example, that when they talk to a foreign business, they typically talk through WhatsApp, right? Because there is no other tool that they use, either email or WhatsApp. And at the end of the day, what they do is that they take screenshots of every conversation, they print it out, and they keep it in their office because they have no clue how to digitally keep this information, right? So that again, really shows, as you mentioned yourself, that why now, right? When something like COVID happens, they're forced to use some technology, yet they have no clue how to do that, right? So with solution like ours, we're able to digitalize quite a few vendors across the region. So I think that again played a role in convincing many of these investors.
Do you think people will go back to the office? What is your story on that? I mean, of course they're going back to the office, right? I mean, it's not going to change overnight, but what is going to change in this new normal, right? I mean, for me, but I think as well for you and for many people in our network, we feel that this is the new way forward, right? So I was, for example, talking with a friend of mine. He is running Jones Lang and Lazelle, and their business is renting office space, right? So I'm just wondering, how will that world look like in 2 years from now? So I'm curious to see, what do you think helping all of these companies and reviewing this? What is your vision post-COVID? How companies will work and moving forward.
Yeah, so and to give again an example, in Jakarta for our office, recently we got an inquiry, whereas a company of, I think it was 50 or 70 people calls to get an office space. And when I'm like, okay, how many desks do you need? And they said 2. There's 70 people and they're getting an office of 2. And I think, that's something that we're going to see more and more, where companies, rather than getting the entire team back, what they can do, because it's much more cost efficient if you have, people like developers or designers to actually creative people to work remotely, and you're still going to keep an office. I think you're always going to keep an office because sometimes it just makes sense for important decisions to meet. And from time to time, it's just for the spirit and of the company, and for to nurture the right culture, it makes sense. But office is going to be smaller. I think, you're going to be able to get a nicer office, but much smaller, and you're going to be able to come up with solutions whereas people rotate somehow, right? And majority of people would work from home. At least companies that are very digital in nature, most startups, most tech-enabled businesses going to definitely do that. At least that's my plan.
You should almost say that the hotels need to change their business model, right? I mean, they have so many empty rooms. They should just bang out the walls on the 7th floor and create larger offices there, where it becomes more like a playroom. The team can still meet each other. They can maybe exchange that place with an affiliate office or someone in the same sector, and if they have business meetings over, you're using the business center there. Because also business travel, I was talking with one of the guys here close to me, and he said, like, okay, also business travel is going to change and airlines are going to change as well, for the simple fact that people are just not traveling as frequent as possible, while the majority of the airline business is actually built around, transporting business people, right? So I think the hotels get a new, let's say, a pivot moment coming on. And maybe they should check in with you to see how to handle that in a great way.
I think it actually already happens. I read quite a few articles where hotels would go to co-working spaces, or hotels would on their own try to, because they have this, every hotel has this business center that no one ever uses. The business center is like, it's nicely designed, but it's so rare to see it crowded, to see a lot of people there, right? So I think hotels are learning to redesign that and to make it a bit more as a co-working space and repurpose their space in that way. So it's definitely a trend that I've seen in developed markets. I think in emerging markets, it depends. Like Jakarta, for example, it's a city where the supply is much more than the demand. So just so many office buildings and so few people that actually need to take them. I was having a webinar with Savios recently, and they were showing some statistics, and it's just ridiculous. It's like way too many available office buildings that are empty. So it really depends on where you are, but I do think that a lot of hotels gonna adapt the way you described.
Awesome. Well, I would really love to thank you for your time today. I think a very insightful session, especially around. I loved really learning about how you have dealt with the pivot and staying sane in that moment, and then in the meantime as well raising cash and convincing investors and how to deal with that. That's definitely golden nuggets that I'm going to add into a snippet, so at least people get those takeaways. Is there anything else that I have 100% forgot that you think, like, okay, I would definitely like to share this with the audience?
No, I think the pivot was. I think the pivot would be very interesting for a lot of people, and I'm happy to answer more questions, because it's unusual and it's hard, and there is no right answers, right? Yeah. Everything seems wrong at the time when you're doing decisions like that. So I'm happy to answer more if people reach out.
Awesome. So if people want to know more about you, they can use the common channels, of course, but where you're most frequently and where can people interact with you?
I would say LinkedIn. I'm quite active on, I think, because our CEO is one of the first employees at LinkedIn. So we have a very LinkedIn culture where all of us are very active. We post frequently, so you can find me on LinkedIn.
I see that. Thank you very much for your time, Viktor. Very insightful, and I'm looking forward to post it and inspire the other people. Make magic every day.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you guys for tuning in today at the Founders Tribe podcast. I truly hope you have found some inspiration and the golden nuggets so you can leverage this to lift your founder's game. By the way, if you want to stay updated about our weekly releases, then please hit the subscribe button so you will never ever need to miss out and choose which one of the guests you can tune into. If you're planning to raise capital for your startup and would love to discover if you are fundraise ready, if your startup has what it takes, then please take our free signature fundraise quiz, where we will benchmark your answers against our 9-step Date Your Investor framework. As a result, you will receive a 20-page tailor-made recommendation report to be better tomorrow. Want to find out more? Go to www.thestartupchef.com www.thestartupchef.com. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode.